imminent danger.
His 9-year-old daughter was possibly abducted in a white van, went south on the interstate.
9-year-old found DEAD authorities uncover the horrifying truth. A frantic 911 call shatters the late-night quiet in Lake George, New York. Around 10:00 p.m. on Saturday, July 19, 2025, a father tells dispatchers his 9-year-old daughter has been taken. He claims he's left her in his car for just a moment, and when he came back, she was gone. Abducted by 2 men in a white van. An Amber Alert flashes across the state, sparking a desperate search for a missing child. But less than 24 hours later, that search would come to a devastating end. On Sunday afternoon, the body of 9-year-old Melina Frattolin was found, not in the back of a van, but submerged in the shallow water of a remote pond, miles from where she was supposedly taken. The criminal complaint alleges her body was intentionally hidden under a log. This discovery would turn a frantic search into a homicide investigation, and the grieving father into the prime suspect. As investigators peeled back the layers of his story, they'd uncover a timeline so disturbing and a betrayal so absolute, it would shake communities on both sides of a national border. Chapter 1. A summer vacation. To the outside world, it looked like a simple summer vacation. On July 11, 2025, 45-year-old Luciano Frattolin and his 9-year-old daughter Melina crossed into the United States from their home in Montreal, Canada. The trip was pre-arranged as part of a custody agreement. Melina lived full-time with her mother in Montreal. Her parents had been estranged since 2019, and her mom held full custody, but Luciano had visitation rights, and this trip was one of them. According to police, Melina's mother had no reason to be concerned. There were no prior safety issues or red flags to suggest this trip would be anything other than normal. They traveled through Connecticut and New York, stopping in New York City before starting their journey home. On social media and his company's website, Luciano described himself as a loving father and called Melina the light of his life. There was no documented history of domestic violence or any criminal record to speak of. The picture he painted was of a devoted dad spending precious time with his daughter before she was due back home on July 19th. But as that day unfolded, the idyllic image of this family vacation would be irrevocably shattered. Chapter 2. The final phone call and the frantic report. On the evening of Saturday, July 19th, the day they were due back in Canada, everything still seemed fine. Around 5:30 p.m., surveillance video captured Melina and her father together in Saratoga Springs, New York. An hour later at 6:30 p.m., Melina spoke with her mother on the phone. She said they were on their way back to Canada and sounded happy, giving no indication at all that she was in any danger. That phone call would be the last time her mother ever heard her voice. Just 3.5 hours later, the story took a terrifying turn. At 10:00 p.m., Luciano Frattolin called 911 from the Lake George area, near exit 22 of the I-87 Northway. His story was every parent's worst nightmare. He claimed he had pulled his gray 2024 Toyota Prius over to use the restroom in a wooded area. He said he left Melina alone in the car, and when he got back, she was gone. He told authorities 2 men had forced her into a white van and sped away, heading south. The story was specific and launched an immediate, large-scale emergency response. For those first few hours, law enforcement and the public believed they were searching for a child snatched by violent strangers. Chapter 3. The Amber Alert. The moment the call came in, the clock started ticking. The Warren County Sheriff's Office and New York State Police descended on the area. Based on the seemingly credible report from a distraught father, an Amber Alert was issued for Melina Frattolin. Her face and the description of a white van were pushed out to phones and highway signs across the state. Dozens of officers, specialized K-9 units, and drones were deployed in a massive search effort. The initial focus was entirely on the scenario Luciano had presented: a violent abduction. Police and the public were on the lookout for a white van, believing every second that passed put Melina in more danger. But as the investigation got underway, detectives began to notice something just wasn't right. The story, as horrific as it sounded, had cracks in its foundation. Chapter 4. A Grim Discovery. While the search for a white van continued, another search was underway for Melina herself. As police began to scrutinize Luciano's story, their attention was drawn about 30 miles north. On Sunday, July 20th, the search led them to a remote wooded area in Ticonderoga, New York. At around 1:50 in the afternoon, a team of New York State Forest Rangers made a heartbreaking discovery. There, in the shallow water of a quiet pond, they found the body of 9-year-old Melina. The criminal complaint later revealed a chilling detail. Her body had been intentionally concealed under a log. In that single, horrific moment, the entire case changed. The desperate search for a missing girl was over. Now it was a homicide investigation. The Amber Alert was canceled, and the terrible news was confirmed. The focus of the investigation was about to make a sharp, dramatic turn, away from phantom kidnappers and directly toward the only other person who knew where Melina was that night, her own father. Chapter 5. The Story Unravels. Investigators are trained to listen not just to what is said, but to what isn't. And in Luciana Frattolin's story, the inconsistencies were deafening. Police quickly determined that there was no credible evidence to support his claims. They scoured surveillance footage and witness interviews but found nothing. No white van, no 2 men, no abduction. The entire report, which had triggered a massive law enforcement response, was a fabrication. The timeline became a critical piece of the puzzle. Melina was seen alive and well on video at 5:30 p.m. and sounded fine on the phone with her mother at 6:30 p.m. Police now believe that sometime in the 3.5-hour window between that phone call and Luciano's 911 call, he murdered his daughter. The most damning evidence came from the autopsy. On Monday, July 21st, preliminary results determined Melina's official cause of death was asphyxiation due to drowning. Her death was officially ruled a homicide. She had been drowned, her body hidden in a pond 30 miles away from where her father claimed he last saw her. Authorities issued a public request for anyone who saw Luciano's gray 2024 Toyota Prius in the Ticonderoga area to come forward, hoping to piece together his movements on that fatal night. The lie had been exposed, and the terrible truth was beginning to surface. Chapter 6. A Father's Betrayal. With his story disproven and the evidence mounting, Luciana Frattolin was no longer a victim. He was the sole suspect. On Monday, July 21st, 2025, just 2 days after he'd called 911 with his fabricated tale, Luciano was arrested. He was charged with second-degree murder and concealment of a human corpse. The charges allege she not only took his daughter's life, but then tried to cover it up by hiding her body and inventing a story to mislead police. Later that day, Luciana Frattolin appeared in Ticonderoga Town Court where, through his lawyer, a plea of not guilty was entered on his behalf. He was sent to jail and held without bail as the community and his family tried to grapple with the shocking turn of events. The man who once described his daughter as the light of his life was now accused of extinguishing that very light. Chapter 7. The Unanswered Question. Why? For all the evidence and the clear timeline investigators have pieced together, the biggest question remains unanswered. Why? As of now, authorities have not released a motive for this horrific crime. The investigation is ongoing, with final forensic results still pending. We know Melina's parents were estranged and her mother had full custody. Some who knew Luciano have claimed that while he loved his daughter, he felt tied down by his responsibilities to her, preferring his business interests abroad. But without an official word from investigators, this is just speculation. The why is the missing piece in a puzzle of unimaginable grief. A community in Ticonderoga has held vigils, mourning a little girl they never knew, but have adopted as their own. and a mother in Montreal is left to face a reality where a summer vacation ended in the ultimate act of violence from the one person, besides herself, who was supposed to protect her child. Conclusion and call to action. The case of Melina Frattolin is a tragic story of a father's ultimate betrayal. It began with a planned vacation that spiraled into a calculated deception and a devastating murder. A desperate 911 call about a terrifying abduction was unraveled by diligent police work, which exposed a fabricated story designed to hide an unthinkable crime. The autopsy confirmed the horrifying truth. Melina was not taken by strangers. She was drowned and her body allegedly concealed by her own father. He has now been charged with her murder and awaits his next court date. This case is a heartbreaking reminder of how darkness can hide behind a familiar face and how the search for truth is the first step toward justice.